Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Your Health, Your Choice. Today, we are going to be talking about the Autism Community in Action. And I am so honored and happy to have a very long-term friend of mine, Lisa Ackerman, who is the founder and director of the Autism Community in Action, which is known as TACA, which is an organization that I've been involved with for many, many years. And I was just so excited to be able to bring her on our show for her to share about her story and just all that she's done for our community. She's been one of the strongest advocates for us for so long, and it's just been such an honor to know her and work side by side with her. So hi, Lisa, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. You're such a sweetie, and it's always good to hang out with you.
Yes, it's always fun. We always have so much fun at our conferences, and we get to go to dinner or hang out or just do something silly, and it's always we usually get a barrel of laughs in there at least at some point. And so
Yeah,
it's great.
autism's a messy topic, but we have fun in between all of it
That's
all.
okay. I'm a messy guy, so that's all right too. Yeah. And for those who don't know, I am on the Physicians Advisory Board for TACA. I calculated out. I looked back at my emails to see when I first started getting emails about this, and it's been over 10 years now since I've been on the council, and it's been really great helping to advise Lisa and TACA and all the warrior moms that are out there who have just been such wonderful parts of our family. And I've always looked at our practice, holistic pediatrics and family care, as a family. And absolutely our world of biomedical autism and just taking this very parent-centric, patient, kid-centric approach to helping out on some very difficult challenges that so many family has as part of a family too. And if you ever have the opportunity to go to a TACA conference, you'll know all of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Lisa, I'd like for you to tell me a little bit about just like kind of how did the autism world come to you? Tell us a little bit about that backstory.
The backstory is that everything starts with a spark, and my spark was my son, Jeff, diagnosed in 1998. And we've been on this journey, a very healing journey, but also raising the bar journey and helping him get to an independent life. And when he was first diagnosed, he was diagnosed moderate to severe. And I think there's 22 symptoms of autism, and he had 19 of them 100% on. If it could be 110%, that's what he was. And sleep disruptions, gastro issues, immune dysfunction, metabolics, and completely nonverbal from 15 months till after age 7. And he was the spark behind getting us engaged.
Yeah. And I know that when he was given the diagnosis that you were getting some recommendations, like start thinking about institutional placement.
Yeah, he was
As a parent,
diagnosed.
I can't even imagine how
Yeah.
much of a bucket of bricks that must have felt like.
Yeah, he was diagnosed mentally retarded, now intellectual disability, 6 times. And each time it just felt like they were wrong. I know the first time I came back from one of those diagnostics, my husband walked up the stairs very solemnly, and I went into the kitchen and opened a beer. It was after 4, so relax. And my daughter walked in and said, "What happened?" And I said, "Oh man, it was a terrible meeting. They diagnosed your brother mentally retarded, and I'm so sad and frustrated, and I don't agree with it." And she goes, "Mom, that's BS. He's the only one that can get the VCR from stop flashing 12 o'clock. So she rocked me and got me to think differently. And she's now a behavioral psychologist. So she's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's great. And so I know soon after that, you then actually you launched this parent support group, and I know that you did it in your home. And that's kind of where TACA sprung out from.
And I always tell a story. Don't do this, kids, at home. I put my home address and home phone number on the internet after I did it. My husband's like, "You did what?" But basically I went to 3 different meetings, and it was almost like in those meetings, they were mourning the loss of a child. And I wasn't ready to mourn. I wanted to get busy and help my son achieve great milestones and accomplishments. And I didn't feel like a diagnosis was a decision that would carry him forever. He was much more than that. His name's Jeff, and he's awesome. So I put my home address and phone number. Don't go there. Leave those poor people alone. We moved years ago. basically out said, hey, if you're lost in the world of IEPs, insurance, diet, medical, and trying to find the right resources to help your kid achieve great things, come to this house, this date, this time. And that day, 10 families looked up at us. So that was, on a porch. We were higher up. And anyways, my point being is that's how we got started.
Yeah. So TACA officially became TACA. When was it about?
November 2000. Yeah.
2000. Right.
So
And so
21 years later.
Yeah. So a little bit about my backstory as to how I came into this world. So, I started using herbs and supplements in children even back in 1996, I believe it was, when I was given permission when I was during my residency at Tampa General. So I know that a lot of the physicians and providers who have gotten involved with biomedical autism were people who had a child with autism and who wasn't getting help from the medical community. And so they set out to try to help their kid out as much as possible. And I came to this more because people had started hearing that I was this out of the box thinker that was really listening to what parents had to say. And at one point, one of the very first patient with autism that I was working with, and at first she came to me and said, hey, there's this stool test that you can do to look to see how my kid's good bacteria is and if there's any yeast there. If we find it, could you treat my kid for that? And which my answer was, well, I've never heard of that, but if you have this test, and I certainly know how to use an antifungal treatment, I'm pretty sure I could figure out how to do a probiotic. Sure, let's do that. And then she started, and then that went, and we treated the yeast, and then a little while later she started talking about some of the other types of tests, and she said, there's this Dr. Jeff Bradstreet about 2 hours north of you, and like you guys are really doing the same thing. You need to hook up with him. He's been doing this for a little while longer. He had a child that he needed to help out, but give him a ring. And so I actually I think she first sent me his 42-page manifesto of research that was showing all the different types of tests and treatments that he did. And I'm like, oh my God, this has actually been studied and looked at already. And so I gave Jeff a call, and he graciously called me, invited me up. And my first day up, I drove up to Melbourne from Palm Beach. And over the course of about the next 6 months or so, whenever I had a day off, I would go up and hang out with Jeff. And soon after, he said, hey, there's this conference that we're putting on called the Dan Conference. It's up in Cherry Hill. And I think that was the second or maybe the third year last that I did it. And I'm like, you should really come up. And so I went up there, and I'm like, oh my God, when I got there, just the number of providers, doctors who were there, the parents, the breakout sessions, the science sessions. And I'm like, I just couldn't believe it, because I really thought I was on my own. I was trying to figure out, and I'm like, I'm not on my own here. And so it was such a remarkable thing. And then I know that you came to, I believe the year after is when you came to your Dan conference. And so
San Diego.
Yeah. And so it was just kind of, interesting how that's kind of how our paths first met. Now, a couple things I did want to do. So obviously we talked about the very beginning of TACA. Okay. Tell me a little bit about how TACA came to be what it is now. We'll talk about what TACA's working on in a little bit, but kind of take me how we went from this 10 people in a room to like this amazing national organization.
Well, it was about 6 months later that 60 people were in my living room, and it was just a regular living room. We had stairs, a living room, and an adjacent dining room and a kitchen. And there were people all up and down the stairs and on every piece of carpet and chair throughout that area. And it was really stuffy and crowded, and I knew we had to. So I called my church, and I'm like, hey, do you guys, that meeting space, is it available on Saturdays? And they said, yeah. But the realization that one day when 60 people were in my living room, and I look at my husband, and I go, there were people who drove from Arizona and from Nevada and Arizona to Huntington Beach, California for this meeting. And I'm like, I'm blown away that they would have to get in their car to go get that information. And it's kind of a funny story. A gal walked in and said, this is really great. Who's in charge here? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's go find out together. And we start walking around, and she's like, hey, aren't those pictures of you? And I'm like, yeah, it is me. But it was fun to, let's go find out together. Anyway, so she asked me, I really like this, and my house is over 2.5 hours away. I'd like to start a chapter. And I'm like, a chapter? Are you kidding me? Anyway, so my husband and I developed 3 different businesses. So my background is a lot of procedures, policies, organization, and keeping people on task and a management level. And after Jeff was diagnosed, I kind of lost interest in our businesses that took a while to build. I got really attracted to autism, and it needed so much. It was like water in a desert. It needed so much help and support, and a little bit of structure went a very, very, very long way. And I still feel like we're in the puberty stage, coming out of puberty, getting into adulthood at age 21, and probably making some dumb mistakes here and there. But we really want to help families, and we really want to go out of business for the right reasons.
Yeah. And how many chapters do we actually have now?
Well, we're in all 50 states.
Uh-huh.
We are in all 50 states. We have hundreds of mentors and hundreds of community leaders, chapter leaders across the U.S. Still being in a pandemic, there's a lot of stuff that's not back to normal, if you will. And I refuse to call this phase of life normal. So we've innovated enough. We can help anyone in any U.S. state or outlying territory.
Yeah. And for those who and we'll give more plugs along the way, but if you want to check out more about the different chapters and what's being done, the website is TACANOW, TACANOW.org, and you'll find a lot of information about just everything that we're going to be talking about today and where these chapters are at and how you can connect and how you can get involved. Financially, we can use help as well, all types of things, but, also just getting involved, even, if you know somebody, even if you yourself are not a family with a child with autism or a person with autism, pass this along, because there's really nothing else in our country, in the world, like what's being accomplished with TACA. And just such a hats off to Lisa and again everybody. This is definitely a village type of thing. And
It is.
when I think about, like, even like the people who I've gotten a chance to so wonderfully work on, and the people on our advisory board, the Dan Rosignol's and the Andrew Usmans and Julie. I mean, my goodness, it's just when I look around and be able to say, wow, these are people I can bounce ideas off of. These are people who are the doctor warriors amongst us, as we're working with all of the parent warriors. And like, it's just been such a wonderful put together, and get us all in a room, because we've had throughout the years we've had think tanks where they just there was a time where I remember for Dan that they brought us all together in a room, basically just said, talk for a couple days, and then there was a little bit of agenda, but it was a free form session with a couple of things, and like just the things that we were able to come up with, because we're all really outside the box thinkers, and put all of us together. And besides, we also really enjoy each other. It's just a joy for all of us to be together. But hopefully, now that COVID's, God willing, coming to an end, that we're gonna really slowing down, that we'll all be able to be together again real soon. And I know that TACA conference was on video next year, and God willing, we'll all be able to be together there and to be able to hug each other. I miss that so much.
Yeah, me too. Me
Yeah.
too.
So tell us a little bit more just about the status and like what some of the main projects that TACA is working on right now.
Well, I mean, right now we're navigating a lot of families out of COVID, and we're keeping our eyes and ears to the ground. There's some really interesting studies, and maybe I'll send them to you, on how COVID has affected families. I mean, one study talks about $18,000 loss in income for special needs families, especially autism. And that's just the average. We know some for other families, they had to not work at all because, virtual learning, Zoom classes, and not having any assistance really doesn't really help when you have a kid on the spectrum, when you need to work and you can't work if they need your support. We're also seeing caregivers, people in the therapeutics side, leave the industry because they can get more money being paid at McDonald's or working at Whole Foods. So it's been a huge challenge helping families navigate the pandemic. But I'll tell you, they are some strong people, and I admire them in so many ways. And autism was tough before the pandemic. It's a lot tougher now. And we're working with people to figure out compensatory services within school districts and other educational and academic environments, and getting kids back into full-time school and services. So it's really important to me to navigate families outside the pandemic and get back to what the true normal should be, not this phase.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of other things we're working on, but the virtual, there are a couple of bright spots. I hate the pandemic. I think the pandemic's awful. I really miss humans
Really,
and
I think it's been
hugging.
just wonderful.
Uh,
So,
yeah, I won't tell you how much fun my husband is having. He's living his best life. I think he's been practicing for a pandemic his entire life. Anyways, my point
yeah,
being,
some people. I mean, I know
yeah, they're
my son.
enjoying.
Yeah, yeah, my son Benjamin, who's high functioning on the spectrum. I mean, like especially during last year when it was my minute, he was in hog heaven. I mean, Benjamin's like, it's interesting because as somebody although with his rigidities and his OCDs, you know, he's also like the happiest kid that I know. I mean, just like, 18 years old and like never got into any of the stuff that most teenagers get into.
Mhm.
But my goodness, I mean, he was just in his own element. I mean, he actually did incredibly better academically online for the year. He picked up. He's independent that he was able to do that, but he had his best academic year during that, and he didn't have to interact with a bunch of people, which of course for
Yeah.
some of our kids on the spectrum, that's right up their alley. So, and everybody definitely had their own experience. I was able to kind of take a chill year. I didn't have to travel so much. I was able to hang out more with the kids. I played football with my kids every day with Naomi, and I'm like, wow, I would never normally be home at 4 o'clock while it's still sunny out to be able to do
Yeah.
anything. So, we all
Well, I
had
mean,
our own experiences, but we've all been
we've
emotionally scarred.
exactly. I think the reboot, figuring out what's important and having that realization on those items has been, the silver lining in all of this. But
Yeah,
even the 10% of the kids on the spectrum who thrived in this environment, my kid's in the 90%, he misses, all of the social opportunities and doing the things he could be doing. I mean, he's 24. He wants to be mingling and, dating and going to bars and playing pool. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't
yeah,
want to be stuck at home with the rents.
right.
But I look at even the 10% that thrived. I'm concerned about how they're going to be when they get back in the community. And, we're seeing a lot of OCD, anxiety, aggression,
Yes,
wandering.
we are.
And so isolation is not good for a lot of kids either. So I worry about those things, not just, the neurotypical kids, but the kids on the spectrum have unique issues. And
Yeah,
that's our strategy is to try to help families navigate these waters back into what's normal.
yeah. Now, in terms of some of the other resources that are available to families, we have our webinars and we have our conferences and all of the information that's online. But maybe you could tell a little bit more about some of those other resources that are available for people.
Yeah, then one of the other silver linings is our virtual meetings, and we've tripled our reach with reaching new families. And it's really great because we can bring industry experts, to people and allow them to really connect on a different way. So we've been doing like west, east, south, and north different meetings, so you can at least gather by geography, but also meet nationally when you need to. We double digit out our revenue into scholarships. So last year was over 14% of our revenue went into family scholarships, and that money doesn't go directly to the families based on need and what's available. We do a lot of functional medicine scholarships. That seems to be the most requested. And we have other scholarships like ion cleanses in Georgia and, other types of services in different places based on restricted donations. We execute and get those out to families in need.
Yeah.
We
And
do
I've
mentor.
certain I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
I was just gonna say, I've definitely offered the services of those medical scholarships. I don't remember how many times at this point. And, but one of the awesome things about it is, a lot of times when I'm working with the family in the community, it's, locally here. It's like, there's this doctor who's looking at these things very differently. You may want to connect with them, but sometimes I have people who come in who have like really no idea beyond the fact that I'm a pediatrician and I'm doing things different. But when a
Yeah.
TACA family comes to me, that's not who they are. They've done their research. They've been connected for a while. I don't have to start off with this is what the gut health, the gut brain connection is. This is what that is. They can teach me. They can go in my waiting room and give a lecture to people. So, we're able to really jump in and dig so much faster and so much deeper because of how well that the TACA community is providing these types of resources for people. So it's such a joy whenever I see one of these families because I know, they're already in the game and now they're really looking to fine tune things.
Yeah. And that's an important aspect is just sometimes that path to get, to your first functional medicine specialist. You just need help. And What I'm really proud of, I think it's over 84% of our scholarships just need that one scholarship, and we'll continue to find ways to pay for it post scholarship. So I'm really, really proud of that. They see the benefit of having a specialist doing the hard work, looking at labs, rethinking things, trying to do new things, doing some research to find those new things. So we appreciate that you have that on board. And we pair that with our mentoring. So it's Match.com without dating, by geography, another parent that's been there, done that, and can help you navigate. And then
Yeah.
there's all the meetings, the Autism Journey Guide, those things we send to your office. Let me know if you
Yeah.
need more.
Yeah.
We last year, I think, gave out almost 2,000 of those at no charge. So people can order those on the website right now. It's just a small shipping fee to get it
Yeah.
shipped to you.
Yeah.
And, really the conference, I think, is super important to me, but none of it comes together without that support piece. So you have the education, you have access to information, but the support aspects. We have an online community, and we also have a toll-free number so parents can call and get the help they need.
Yeah. And I know we typically do the conference in the fall. Do we actually have a date yet for next year? Has that been
We're still
determined?
working on that, and
Okay.
pandemic is still hanging tight. So the first half of the year is kind of interesting. We're trying to navigate carefully and cautiously. But we are looking at October definitely in person in Costa Mesa, California. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Wait.
but we'll
That's great.
continue. We cat's out of the bag. The last 2 years we've done two really awesome virtual conferences, and we've reached almost double the amount of people through those efforts.
Yeah.
So we'll continue a virtual component, but they're going to be separated. It's very hard to do an in-person conference with the virtual at the same time. So we'll
Yes, it is.
separate those as two activities.
Excellent. That's great. Now, tell me about like what your plans like. What are you projecting out over the next 5 years, the next 10 years for TACA?
I'm having a lot of fun. I feel like, I'd love to be out of business for the right reasons, but until then we have to innovate and continue to find things. And I've got 7 objectives, so it's nothing small. We just started our adult services programming earlier in 2021. So we had in 2020 less than 5% of the people we're serving were technically adults, and now that number is starting to grow. So we are going to talkify the adult experience. Just like we did 0 to 22, we're going to make that process easier to navigate self-determination, vocational, college, housing, and anything in between and beyond that area. So we'll continue that out. We're going to continue to do, the, fact-based, science-based education and parent support, but allow for flexibility to be creative and look at new and alternative therapies and treatments. We're going to continue to innovate support. We're doing a lot. We have an app like what you have here that we've acquired. So there's a TACA app in the Android and iOS store now that you can participate and get support right on your cell phone, but in a really HIPAA safe and non-Facebook way, which is cool. We know how Facebook can be.
Yes, we do.
Just one example is like a lot of times self-injury is a big issue, and Facebook censors anything with self-injury. They think it's cutting or suicide. And unfortunately, kids with autism are self-injurious. So it's no disrespect to Zuckerberg, but we got to get off that platform so we can safely talk and address about self-injurious behaviors that have nothing to do with cutting or suicide. So, just one example where we're innovating. We really want to re-roll out and get into the community again. So turn the chapters back on, and also the family events. We have a great sponsor that just came forward to help us do that. We have a medical vision for treatments for new families. We have a federal plan on how to address the autism issues federally. And last but not least, we've got to continue to evaluate and share how COVID has hit our kids and families and navigate them out of it, but yet get the support and the funding that's needed to do that. So those are the 7 areas. Kind of long-winded, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. And when I was reviewing on the website, and of course, having certainly been on the website, but one of the things that jumped out at me was the values of the action, the word action. And when I look at this and I'm like, gosh, that's me. That's the yeah, that's the that's that this is just so sums up my approach, for action. And I'm actually going to go through it so people really have an understanding of what I stand for, what TACA stands for. But A is for authentic, open, transparent. If you've ever hung out with me, I lay it all out there. I feel it's really informative for us to be transparent and honest with who we are, our limitations are, what help we need. And that's something that even as a physician that I certainly need that as well. Caring for C, just deeply, deeply caring about the patients. And, from my perspective, these families know when they walk in the door, and I say, I don't just say, welcome to our office. I say, welcome to our family. These kids are my god kids, they're my nieces, they're my nephews, and just how deep we are, it's not just caring deep for them, they are my families, and so it's just so wonderful. And T for tough, just this is tough work, this is tough life. It's tough as a doctor also having to, as you can imagine, it can be kind of taxing going from one crisis to another as you're
Yeah.
trying to help people out. And
Yeah.
I can't even imagine when you're trying to live that type of, when that, not trying to, when that is your life 24/7, because unfortunately with some of our kids not sleeping, it can be a full 24-hour, 7-day experience, being informed. And that's the I. And it's so, knowledge is so important. Knowledge is power, as they used to say on Schoolhouse Rock. That for me, when I talk to families, I don't want them just to know what to do. I want them to know why. I want them consulting Dr. Google. I want them to challenge me. Information. I learn more from families than I have from any conference, any doctor that I've ever talked to. Just we explore it together, and it's just so great. And optimism for the O. And if you know me, if you hung out with me, I am probably one of the world's great optimists. I'm always saying, no, this is going to work out. We're going to get this figured out. I'm pretty sure I smile when I'm sleeping, just because that's just part of the joy that I bring to it, and I know that it's infectious. And I've also learned that when there's a family who's having a really rough spot, they need light. They need to have something that they can be drawn to, like the fly brought to the light, but just
Yeah.
that just confidence level. And and then never, for the end, just as we all do, we never give up. And gosh, it was just like, oh my God, this is like this is. And this is probably why I've been so connected with TACA from the very beginning, because our
Yeah.
values are the same. So I want to
We
thank you for putting it like that.
the mission, vision, and values. I wake up every day and I kind of just like, yeah, we got that right. Now let's get the rest right.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for that. I did want to remind people, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We now have a social media handle, which is at paging Dr. David MD, Dr. David MD. So please try and hook up with us. Please share this information with other people, because this is just valuable information, and we need to be able to spread the word of all the things that we're doing, all the things that TACA is doing. So Lisa, thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to see you again in person again, and have a great day, everybody. Bye bye.